In the 20th century, the world witnessed the rise of new political ideologies, economic policies, new methods of transportation, and the conception of faster ways of communication. With the rapid spread of information, the earth seemed to shrink, and country borders became smaller than ever before. As the threat of war loomed, the United States fought to prevent potential enemies from emerging in their immediate neighborhood. For the first time in many decades, the US looked towards their neighbors in South and Central America and decided to extend their influence south of the border. The Good Neighbor policy left a lasting impact on American perception of Latin culture. It introduced cultural staples, while at the same time it perpetuated stereotypes. The US government's influence on international relations, its impact on movies, and the cultural legacies it created all contributed to an era that stands out in the world of geopolitical relations. This is a story of diplomacy, propaganda, culture, and politics. In 1943, President Franklin Roosevelt took office and decided to strengthen relations with Central and South American countries. His goal was to establish mutually beneficial economic deals and trades, while also countering the growing influence of European regimes such as the Nazi Party in Germany and the fascist government in Italy. To achieve this, the United States had to shift away from their previous interventionist approach towards the Americas. In the past, the US had a history of strong military interventions in conflicts in countries such as Mexico, Panama, and Haiti. However, they realized that such actions did more harm than good to their relations with these nations. Therefore, they adopted a new approach that avoided interference in the domestic affairs of these countries.
In the field of world policy, I would dedicate this nation to the policy of the good neighbor. The neighbor who resolutely respects himself and because he does so, respects the rights of others. The neighbor who respects his obligations and respects the sanctity of his agreements in and with a world of neighbors.
The Good Neighbor policy aimed to change the way Americans view Latin American nations and vice versa, with a focus on promoting Pan-Americanism and hemispheric solidarity.
Buenos Aires has always held its doors wide open to the foreign, and consequently it now has a cosmopolitan population of 2 million people.
In 1940, President Roosevelt established the Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs, OCIAA, with Nelson Rockefeller as its head. The agency's primary objective was to spread propaganda, especially in South America, where it worked to ban any German or Italian influence and censor any pro-Axis propaganda. At the same time, the United States focused on spreading pro-American propaganda through diverse media. Millions of South Americans watch US propaganda films. The OCIAA was also responsible for cultural exchange, sending multiple missions of artists, teachers, and other professionals to South America and bringing South Americans to the United States. The agency created programs such as Viva America, a CBS radio show, and promoted the exhibition of Latin American countries at the 1949 New York's World's Fair. The motion picture division of the OCIAA was established to spread the Good Neighbor policy throughout motion pictures.
The coordinator of Inter-American Affairs presents São Paulo, the fastest growing city in the world.
It aimed to change the negative stereotypes that had previously characterized Latin Americans as lazy and backwards people. Many Hollywood studios partnered with the government to produce films that could present a positive image of South and Central America. The government encouraged the employment of Latin artists in these productions. One example of this measure was the Walt Disney Mission. In 1941, the Department of State commissioned Walt Disney Studios to create animated features set in South America to be shown in the US. Walt Disney himself led a group of 20 people, including artists, animators, and technicians, on a tour of Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Peru. The Brazilian film Saludos Amigos depicted the cultural specificities of each location and introduced the iconic Brazilian bird, Zé Carioca.
This is what can happen to a big city when a crowd of cartoonists are turned loose. Among the sketches was a promising actor, O Papagayo, the parrot featured in most of Brazil's funny stories. With the help of the wardrobe department, he becomes Joe Carioca.
Saludos Amigos was a box office success and was even nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Many believe that the film changed the views of Americans. It was followed by other animated features such as The Three Caballeros. Without a doubt, the most iconic symbol and muse of the Good Neighbor policy was Carmen Miranda. Born in Portugal and raised in Brazil, Carmen was discovered while performing in Rio de Janeiro and quickly made her way to Broadway. Her success was extraordinary. Soon, she performed in the White House for President Roosevelt and signed a movie contract with Fox. Carmen's captivating stage presence, combined with her remarkable singing and dancing, made her a beloved performer. She starred in several films such as Down Argentine Way, Weekend in Havana, and That Night in Rio.
At first minute, yes, but at second minute, no.
Her extravagant costumes and unique style made her an instant sensation in the United States. And at a time where Latinos were not viewed with good eyes, she became one of the highest paid women of Hollywood, becoming a prolific ambassador for the policy. Films such as The Gang's All Here explicitly appoint her image as the good neighbor.
Can retire. Well, there's your good neighbor policy. Come on, honey, let's good neighbor it.
Although the Good Neighbor policy was successful in changing the image of Latinos and making them more visible in the United States, it is important to note that the representation of these cultures was problematic. Hollywood tried to mix the diverse cultures of Latin America. It treated them as interchangeable, and it failed to appreciate unique viewpoints and cultures. For example, a Brazilian actress could be cast to play a Cuban character, despite the significant cultural differences between these two countries. This lack of sensitivity and attention to diversity made the integration and respect of these rich ethnicities impossible. In retrospect, the Good Neighbor policy did not achieve their wish of erasing stereotypes, but it simply created new ones. The South was represented as a tropical paradise filled with samba and women in colorful clothes, and it stopped there, when in fact it contained a deep variety of other cultures, music, locations, and people. Since that time, the Latin countries already viewed the misrepresentation. Down Argentine Way was deeply criticized and later banned from Argentina. Weekend in Cuba was also criticized for becoming a hybrid that lacked the true Cuban representation. Even Carmen Miranda, the most famous Latin American actress of the time, was not universally admired in her home country of Brazil, as many felt her performances were disrespectful and distasteful. After World War II, the American craze of Latino culture faded, and in 1946, the OCIAA was extinguished. While the Good Neighbor policy did lead to some positive outcomes, such as fostering a new period of peace and dialogue between the Americas and creating structures for treaties such as the Real Pact, it also had its negative consequences. The media created during this period often appropriated other cultures and created shallow, stereotypical representations that are still prevalent today. However, it cannot be denied that the policy also gave rise to important cultural icons such as Carmen Miranda. Miranda's life story is fascinating and complex, and could be the subject of an interesting video if you wish. As a Brazilian, I find this period of cultural exchange fascinating, as it created iconic films and figures and opened a chance for the world to see my culture. However, we must also recognize that it perpetuated stereotypes that still persist today. Looking back on this period, we can appreciate these classic films and figures with a more critical eye, knowing we can represent cultures in more respectful and accurate ways. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. Goodbye.
Tem saia engomada, tem sandália enfeitada, tem e tem graça como ninguém. Como ela requebra bem.